Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Sew Goth on YouTube. Sew Goth is a sewing blog I started 5 years ago to document my process as I work on building a wardrobe that fits my style and my body. I realized a long time ago that ready to wear clothing was not really meant for me. I couldn't find anything that I liked as far as style, and when I did find something, it would not fit me properly. So, for the past 15 years, I have been sewing my own clothes, and I am proud to say that 90% of my wardrobe is me made. September is back to school month, so why not start the month by sewing your very first skirt? You've been thinking about sewing for a while. You know that if you could sew, you could create really cool, amazing clothing that represents who you are, but you are scared that it's going to be really difficult. So, this first episode is going to focus on the easiest skirt you will ever make. This is a gathered skirt. The waistband is created with elastic. It is a one panel or two panel pattern, and we're going to create this pattern based on your specific measurements. It is really easy to do, it is really easy to sew, and it's really versatile. You can sew it in cotton for a puffier look, you can sew it in rayon for a softer look. You can make it puffier or less puffy depending on how much fabric you use. And you can make it short, medium length, or long. So it is really great project if you're looking into starting to sew, but it's also a great project if you are a more experienced sewist who just needs an easy project to cleanse your palette, or if you have a lot of fabric that you want to go through. So let's start by measuring ourselves, and then we're going to create a pattern, and finally you're going to sew a skirt that you are actually going to be proud to wear out in the world. The first measurement that we are going to need is your waist. There are a few ways to figure out where your waist is. You can measure up from your belly button anywhere from 1/4 of an inch to an inch. And that would give what pattern designers use as a waist. But in most cases, your waist is going to be the narrowest part of your body. So you're going to take your measuring tape, you're going to wrap it around where you would like the waist of your skirt to be. And then you're going to write down this number. You are going to need this number as we move on to drafting your pattern. The next measurement is the hips. You are going to need that measurement if you were planning on making a skirt that is fairly straight, but you need to make sure that it is going to clear your hips as you're pulling your skirt. The last measurement that you're going to need is the length of your skirt. So starting from where you measured your waist, you're going to place your tape and let it fall, and you're going to determine how short or long you would like your skirt to be. It's completely up to you. So once again, you're going to need 3 measurements. You're going to need your waist, the hips, and the length of your skirt. Now that we have our measurements, we're going to start working on creating our pattern, 1 or 2 panels of fabric. So I know that I want my final length to be 20 inches, but I need to account for the waistband, and I also need to account for the hem. So I'm gonna have to add some length to the final 20 inches in order to get everything that I need: the waistband, the length, and the hem. My elastic is 1 inch wide, so I need to add 1 inch to my waistband. Then I like to add a little bit of what I call wiggle room, so that when I'm getting the elastic into the channel, I have enough room in there to move the elastic around without the elastic getting twisted. And then I am going to add another quarter inch, because that's going to be the clean finish for my waistband. I am not going to be finishing the raw edge. I am just going to fold it by a quarter, and then I am going to fold it by another quarter, an inch and a quarter. So when I add this all up, I'm going to have my 1 inch for the elastic, plus a quarter inch for the wiggle room, so I have enough room to get the elastic into the channel without a lot of struggle, plus another quarter. So that's going to be 1.5 inches that I am adding to my 20 inches of length. Once I am done with the waistband, I need to decide how deep I want my hem to be. I'm going to be using the same method to finish my waistband. I am just going to fold a quarter, and then I want my hem to be about 1 inch deep. So I have the 1/4 inch that I'm going to be pressing and folding, and then I am going to fold the hem again by 1 inch. That's going to give me another 1.25 inches. So I am going to be adding this all up: 20 inches of the length, plus 1.5 inches for the waistband, plus 1.25 for my hem, and then I'm gonna have 22 inches and 3/4. So that's the final length of my skirt. Next, I need to decide how much gathering I want to add to my skirt, and that is going to affect how wide my waist is going to be. If I want some very soft gathers, I'm just going to take my waist measurement and double that. But if I want gathers that are a lot more obvious, then I am going to take my waist measurement and I'm going to multiply that by 3. That is going to give me pretty big, puffy gathers. So you have to decide what kind of a look you want. If you want a look that is a little more straight instead of the puffiness of the gathers, then we're going to have to take into consideration your hip measurements. When we are working with the ×2 or 3, we're gonna get a skirt that has a certain amount of puffiness around the waist. If I want my skirt, however, to be more on the straight side, I need to use my hip measurement, simply because I need to make sure that I'm going to be able to pull that skirt and it's going to go over my hips without any problem. To this number, I am going to have to add a little bit of ease. Ease is just a little extra fabric that helps the garment move when you're moving your body. So I am going to be adding 2 inches of ease, 1 inch to each side, and that is going to be the number that I am going to use as the waist of my skirt. In the end, I decided to go with the whole width of the fabric, 60 inches, so I cut 2 panels with a 30-inch waist and 22 3/4 length for each one of the panels. Before I cut into any fabric, I make sure to iron it. It is really good to remove all the wrinkles so that you can be as precise as possible when you're cutting your pattern pieces. Make sure to clearly mark the wrong side of your fabric. Sometimes, in the case of this fabric, for example, it's very hard to determine right from wrong side. And in this case, if I had mixed up right and wrong, it would not be that big of a deal, but sometimes it can make a big difference. You're going to take your 2 panels and you're going to have them with right sides facing. So you're going to be looking at the wrong side of both panels. Right sides are touching each other. And you're going to pin your side seam, carefully matching the raw edges of both panels. It doesn't really matter how you place your pins, perpendicular or parallel, as long as when you take your fabric to the machine, you can easily remove the pins. You do not want to sew over your pins. I use a magnetic sewing gauge to help me have very precise seams. And always backstitch at the beginning and at the end of your seam. That guarantees that your seams are going to be very secure and they are not going to unravel as you wash your garment and you wear your garment. As you are sewing, make sure that you're removing your pins. You do not want your sewing machine needle to hit one of your pins. That is very dangerous. If you want a quick and easy way to finish raw edges of stable wovens, get yourself a pair of pinking shears. They are the easiest and fastest to finish raw edges. And once you're done sewing your seams, make sure that you press them open. Once your side seams are done, it's time to move on to the waistband. For the waistband, I pressed a 1/4 inch of the fabric in, and that's going to give me a really nice clean finish to my waistband. And then I pressed another 1.25 inches. That is because my elastic is 1 inch wide, and I like to leave a little bit of room so that I can get the elastic into the casing without a lot of trouble, but there's not too much room that is going to end up allowing the elastic to twist. Once I have pressed both the 1/4 inch and the 1.25 inch, pin all around, but make sure that you're leaving an opening. That is how you're going to get the elastic into the casing. I like to leave a pretty big opening because I feel it's easier and my hands don't hurt as much as I'm trying to get the elastic in and out. You're going to follow the same steps to press the hem. You're going to start with a 1/4 inch, press all around the skirt, and once you are done with that, you are going to press your hem. It depends on how deep you want it to be. I wanted it to be 1 inch deep, and if you don't feel confident that you can press without marking your fabric, you can always use a pen or pencil, or you can use a seam gauge so that you can mark that hem very precisely. If you are using a marking tool, make sure to try that on a scrap first so that you know that you're going to be able to wash it and it's not going to permanently mark your fabric. Take your skirt to your sewing machine. I am able to move my needle left and right. So in this case, I moved my needle all the way to the left so that I can get very, very close to the edge of my hem. And then just sew from one end to the other. Since I am going to be coming back to that very same spot, I am not back stitching. I am going to secure that seam once I sew over it a second time. That's going to happen once I have sewed all the hem and I am coming back to my initial point. The waistband is going to be sewn in the exact same way. The only difference is that you need to remember that you're going to have to leave an opening. That opening is that what's going to allow you to get the elastic into the casing. Since I am not going to be sewing this waistband shut, I am not going to have an opportunity to run a second row of stitches on top of the first one. This is the reason why I made sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end of that row of stitches. We're going to be using a safety pin to guide the elastic into the casing. So you're just going to get the safety pin at the very beginning of your length of elastic. You're going to find the opening that you left so that you could get the elastic into the casing, and all you're going to do is you're going to feel for the safety pin inside of the casing. You want to be very careful so that your elastic is flat all the way in and that you're not going to end up twisting your elastic. This is why a 1/4 inch is perfect. It gives you enough room to get the elastic into the casing without a lot of trouble, but it doesn't give your elastic enough room to end up twisting inside of the casing. And we're going to do this until we get to the other side of the opening. Once you get to the other side of the opening, you're going to match the ends of the elastic and you're going to overlap them by about 1 inch. You're then going to take your elastic to the sewing machine, and I like to sew 2 parallel lines, and then I connect one end of one line to the other end of the other line with the help of a diagonal stitch row of stitches. You are going to be using a zigzag stitch because you want to make sure that your stitches are going to expand as the elastic expands. If you use straight stitches, your stitches are going to pop and the elastic is going to end up coming loose inside of the casing. The last thing to do is sew the opening of the elastic shut. In order to do that, you're going to have to pull your fabric a little bit both in front and behind of the needle. You want the fabric to be flat as you're closing that opening. And once again, make sure to backstitch at the beginning and at the end of that row of stitches, and your skirt is ready. It looks absolutely adorable. You can make it in different fabrics, in different lengths, and this is your very first skirt.